We are a podcast for product marketers and B2B SaaS who feel misunderstood of what they do.
From someone who truly gets what you do and
basically help you feel less like a misfit, being unignorable in your role.
All right, season 5 is still here. You got your boys at We're Not Marketers. I will kick it off before we introduce our awesome guest for the day. I'm Eric. I am the Franken marketer of the group. Sliding over to my right of the screen, Zach. Give him an intro.
Yo, this is Zach, the sales water lad on the mic. You know who it is. But more importantly, you want to know who Gab is.
I don't even know myself, but yeah, Gab Bujo. It's a work in progress, right? Gab Bujo, sales deck associate. I just keep doing sales decks till I'm tired of it, and I'll pass it back to Eric.
Yeah, I think we were tired of it first season, right? But we still have you doing them because Zach and I refuse to do our own slide decks. And now for the moment that everyone actually comes to our episodes to hear who we've got. And today we've got a journeyman of product marketing. And by that, I mean someone who has stuck with product marketing so long. When I was looking at their LinkedIn rap sheet yesterday, I was just like, product marketing, another product marketing. And so I love it because we want to get back to our roots of that this season and have more of those discussions about product marketing and how it affects others. So we've got longtime PMM, David Lim here. And if you go through his rap sheet, like I said, you'll see Razer, you'll see big names like Google and HP. You'll see some of the more recent ones like Rent Spree and currently, is it Brivo or Brevo? Brevo. There we go. So Brevo as the senior PMM. So David, welcome to the We're Not Marketers show. A bunch of misfits, and we're happy to have you.
Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. And I'm just a normal product marketer trying to survive. Hope I could help some people out here today.
That's very fitting because you are going to have a skeleton branded cover art making it look like you have not survived. And I think that's how a lot of us feel right now. But David, if you're a fan of the show, you'll know we have one question that we always ask, and we let the mustache guy ask it. So Gab, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, David. Are product marketers actually marketers? Why or why not?
I spent some time yesterday thinking about this, and I'm like, I'd love to say that we aren't marketers, but at the end of the day, most companies and C-suite, they'll see us as marketers. If we aren't, what would really make us different from product managers? Although I do feel like what defines if a PMM is a marketer or not really depends on the company you're working for and the challenges that they're coming across as for the PMM team to take on. Let's say it's demand gen or growth or awareness, or maybe it's about improving the product usage. I think at the end of the day, they'll always just see us as marketers. But again, it really depends on the problem.
Quick follow-up on that. So it really depends on the company context. Across all of your experience, would you say you felt more like a marketer in the marketing department or in the product department? And follow-up question would be, can you tell us a moment when you really felt more like a marketer than a product person?
I would definitely say at most companies I join, when I'm in the marketing org, I do feel more like a marketer. A lot of it is focused on thought leadership pieces, content pieces. Usually the goal is really focused on increasing sales pipeline or increasing demand generation or lead generation. So I would say that's a thing. But I think this may sound cheesy, but I feel like especially for PMM, it isn't given, but it's earned by showing the numbers. And I think I saw a while back, Devin, I don't know if you guys know Devin O'Rurik. He's from Fluvio. He owns a PMM consulting firm. But he had a post around PMMs crossing the chasm. And he was talking about how PMMs aren't just launching leads and sales support any longer. He pointed to orgs like Pinterest, Notion, and OpenAI and how are driving big levers. But the sad reality is they only represent a small percentage of PMMs today. He talked about those big companies, but obviously there's a lot of no-name companies with PMMs today. Most people these days have to earn the respect and show that we understand the customers, we can launch the products in a way that drives revenue and influence the roadmap and its strategy. And I think that's what really makes PMM stand out today.
Follow-up question to that. What happens if a PMM doesn't garner that internal respect.
You get put in a black hole. And then what you end up being is I don't want to say it, but the salesperson's biatch, right? You're the guy that I think every PMM hates this and can resonate with this, but it's that quote that we always hear. Can you make that deck pretty? That's really what you end up becoming.
Yeah,
And
Gab.
yeah.
And that's that creating function, basically, right? Just the sausage factory, just push, and nothing gets truly done, and you can show the impact of your role at the end.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the thing, right? It's unless if you really gain that respect early on, it'll be really hard to get out of that and try to really gain that respect and whatnot.
Well, then I know I've seen like I said, I've seen the rap sheet, right? You start as an associate product marketer. You've even dabbled around in director level. Okay, that definitely needs to earn some respect there. So I'm going to ask you later for some tips and tricks, but it couldn't have been all rainbows and sunshines, right, David? What was a time where you felt like, hey, I'm not like one of these regular marketers on the team that I'm on? Or when have I not earned some of that respect? And what was that situation like for you? And how are you coping with some of those emotions?
No, I know. I don't want to bring up company names here because obviously I get PTSD, but
Oh,
at
don't
the end
worry.
of the day, what was that?
Don't worry. We have a group therapy session that we host after this episode that you're welcome to join at any time.
I will probably definitely join that. I'll definitely say what makes us really stand apart is how we work cross functionally. Like how you're working with the sales teams, the customer success team, and the product team is really what's going to differentiate us from just like the standard marketer. Because at the end of the day, we're supposed to be the people that provide the intel across the different teams. And this might not be surprising, but sales teams don't really talk to product teams in most occasions. The best companies do, but a lot of companies don't. And actually, there's a reason for that. Product team, they don't want to hear it from sales teams. They just don't. But the reality is the sales teams are usually the closest to the customers. So they have feedback that they provide. And that's where it's great to have a product marketer because they can fill that gap and be that bridge. They have the respect and the understanding and the camaraderie with the sales team and the product teams. So they can connect the two and be like, hey, this is what I'm hearing from sales. However, I'm also hearing this from our customers as well on those calls. And I think that's what really sets us apart. I was at a company where product marketing fell under the product org. And I think I knew when product marketing was working, and this is when I was a director, was when we were doing research on a beta product. I was the one that brought the product team, the sales team, and the design user research team together to really help us understand our audience. And then in the beta stage, we would talk to beta users, ask a bunch of different questions like, what do you see as the value of this? What problem did you have before? Would you consider this product a nice to have or a need to have? By doing this research earlier on with the product marketing team, like we can take that intel back to the other teams and let them know, hey, this beta product that you've been working on for the last quarter now, it's not getting that great feedback. We need to circle back and maybe come up with a new plan or see how we can pivot. That's when I definitely started seeing it work. And then I've seen it effective when we made those subtle adjustments and changes. We were able to really increase upsells for this new feature. We were able to increase product awareness and usage. I think those were the things that really made me realize product marketing can really work, but a big part of it has to be how we work cross functionally and how we can support the other teams.
Dude, that was, to me, I don't want to use the H word, but that got me a little hard. Just thinking, like, for real. That is the dream scenario for probably 75% of the PMMs that I talk to is we just went away from lead gen. We just went away from pipeline. We went into more of a let's reduce churn, let's activate customers faster, let's get them adopting this cool new thing, which, dude, that is like such a cool story. And I think just hearing, and you said you were under the product org in that situation. Interesting. So, yeah, clearly not a marketer by definition in that organization, and doing that different cross functional work. So, that's a great story, man. Thanks for sharing that. Boys, thanks for bearing with me while I drop the hard H.
I'm like, you mentioned group therapy after this conversation. I think you might need to schedule a follow-up call with your general practice doctor because, yo, I've been this way for the
I've been
last,
hosting too many therapy sessions, not going to enough of
I'm like, I've been having this for the last 7 hours and it's not going down. Help me.
them. So I get David. So with that, I know you were forced into that function of, hey, we're in product. I can focus a little bit more of my effort there. That's why they hired me in the first place. Do you have any like advice for how do you do that, or what have you brought to other organizations then where you've been placed in marketing and still be able to make that cross-functional impact? Because I do know we had Becky Trevino on a few seasons ago. She intentionally puts that side together. So
Yeah.
product marketing is together in her realm. And we see those things work, but how can you make that happen when you're not in that situation? But like you said, it can work and it does work.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big part of it is you gotta be, and this is probably what really sets like an early stage PMM to more like an experienced one. But like, I think a big part of it is you got to be a big advocate and educator of product marketing, what we are. Like, you have to constantly educate the other teams of what we do, our responsibilities. But I think a big part of it is like you're there to not just come in and be like, hey, like we're gonna do this, but it's like you're there to really just like brainstorm with the other teams. Like, I've sat down with sales teams, I've sat down with the product team, and we've really just defined, hey, just tell me a little bit about like your guys' day to day. It's like you're doing persona research, like you're really understanding like their pain points. I would talk to our product team and be like, hey, tell me like what you guys are responsible for, what you guys work on. And sometimes they'll say, oh, we do like pricing research, we do competitive research. And hey, like that's an area we can help out in too, right? Like we can we can do research in a little bit of a different angle as well, where we're looking at like the market landscape. We can look at what other customers are saying about this competitor, that competitor. Those are things that I'm not really looking at. Most product managers are looking at like feature gaps, like where their product has a feature that another product doesn't. So they're looking at it from a little bit more technical angle. And I would say it's like you're doing that across all the different teams, sales teams, customer success teams. And then from there, like how product marketing can help feed into those other teams or how we can help support those other teams. I always position it as, hey, we're here to make your job easier and better, like whether that be feeding you more intel. I think a lot of this conversation that I'm really focusing on is what makes PMMs really effective outside of knowing the customer is knowing how to work well with your cross-functional teams.
Nice. And you said something there, and I want to do a little loop around. So when we started this conversation before we hit record, you mentioned that founders just don't know what the F they're doing when they're hiring PMMs. And yes, he didn't use the real swear word like I would have used, everybody. He went straight and went PC correctness. So I guess I'm curious then, you know that product marketing works when you go cross functional, right? And then founders have this idea in their mind of how things should work. And they attach you to these KPIs like leads, so on and so forth. How do you change that conversation then to be like, look, I can't be owning something like win rate because the salespeople are in charge of winning deals, but I can help influence it, or all this work you're doing on the product end and all this cross functional work. How do you then explain to the founder that this is the type of goals that I'm going to have to be tied to? And yes, we might not be able to point to one thing, but I'm making everyone's jobs easier. Like you said, how do you show that work? How do you make that conversation more tangible?
I think that's still something I'm still trying to figure out today. I think it's hard because it's different across all companies. Fluvio even ran a report around this, but the numbers say only 24% of the candidates felt the company understood PMM's value versus 35% of ICs or senior PMMs. And I think it's because, like, at the end of the day, the director is the one that's always in conversations with the other C-level suites and higher level reports. And I think it really just comes down to those clear expectations, right? We can't really, to some degree, like help with the win rate. We look at it quarter by quarter and we see that maybe for the last month, the win rate was at 20% or whatever, or we'll say 75%. And then the quarter after, it's 85%. And that's 10%. But then usually the conversation will happen where there's a lot of factors that could contribute to that though, right? Maybe they had more budget or Maybe they really liked our sales team. And that's the argument that's hard to converse with. But then again, as I mentioned, if you have a very good relationship with the sales teams, they'll advocate for you too. Hey, we couldn't have done this if David didn't do the research or if he didn't create that pretty deck. But that pretty deck at the end of the day comes out to this narrative that we build out, this story that we build out. So I think a big part of it is not just setting clear expectation about how we influence, but like when you have those cross-functional testimonials from the other teams, like we wouldn't have been able to do this without the product marketing team. I think that's when the leadership team can't really say much outside of the team really needs you. So I think that's the little bit of the difference. But I like to really be nowadays, especially as I join any organization, be very upfront where, hey, there are definitely some metrics that we can really take ownership of. Like I mentioned, product awareness, and maybe even product usage to some degree. Because if you have a new feature, we could see the adoption of that and we could see the retention. And if we're working closely with the product team, we can get the intel from customers that are using it, of why they're using it, why they're not using it. And that whole research that we do, we can showcase that to the C-level suite. But I think at the end of the day, really, it's got to be like getting the advocates from the other teams to really back you on that one.
David, I have a follow-up here.
I was just about to say that from what I understand, product marketing, we often feel like an island, but it doesn't mean that you should not build bridges across different departments, because when you have that understanding, you can counter the argument of, okay, but what's the ROI of that product marketing role? It's not like everything should and can be measured, because then you just get lost in the of, okay, but there's a lot of stuff we cannot control, essentially. Making sure you're good with sales, but understanding as well that you have a lot of impact on product, especially with the awareness and adoption part.
Even when it comes to customer success teams, one thing that I really emphasize with the customer success teams is in those QBRs, you can showcase some of the new products that we're working on. And that's something that the product team would never do. Like they don't really think about, oh, the customer success, they're talking to our customers on a quarterly basis. And they're not really associating the stuff that they're working on for the next quarter, but we can help validate that by creating that bridge. In the QBR, I've actually worked on building out the outline for the QBRs with the customer success team, where it's like, hey, these are just some products that the product team is working on for the next quarter. We would love to get your feedback on some of these things. There'd be a slide with just a very short blurb of what it is. And then we can just gauge them. Is this something that you'd be interested in testing out, trying out? And from there, we have earlier intel before the product is even built. And that's something that is very valuable for the product team. But also it makes the customer success team looks good because they're building that cadence and that trust with the customer. So I think those are things that like, how are you going to be able to capture that in a metric? Like it's not easy. They say NPS, but if you dive deeper into that, customer will usually say appreciate that they're getting my feedback around the product and stuff like that. I don't know, it's hard because at the end of the day, they tie those metrics into like customer success or sales or product, but because maybe PMM is still such an unfamiliar function, that tends to be the struggle with a PMM team.
So, David, quick follow-up question to that. I agree with you, and we all agree that PMM is a misunderstood function. Like in the short time you shared, customers like working with customer success, advocating the role with founders, partnering with sales, being under product. When we feel misunderstood, one way to alleviate that is to chase after different deliverables. It's not a good or bad thing. Like you mentioned, Devin, and he even mentioned it too. Hey, as PMMs, we have to bust our butt. But it does create this internal friction of chasing respect versus attracting respect.
Mm-hmm.
What's really cool hearing what you're saying is that it seems like at some point you could just go in and be like, this is what needs to be done. This is how we need to approach this. I'd love to hear more. At what point did you uncover that shift? What had to happen for you to feel like, I know what I'm doing, versus I'm who's just starting the role, so I'm going to take on these 20 different projects just to prove that I'm a valuable product marketer?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I would definitely say like it's twofold, right? I mentioned how like PMMs need to know how to work really well with the cross-functional teams, but the other part of it that makes it super valuable is how well we know the customer. And if we know the customer really well, the other teams are going to want to go to us and ask us for intel, right? Sales teams will always ask me like, "Hey, for this next quarter, do we know like their priorities?" For Brevo, one of our customers is like I focus on the multifamily segment, so it's like we know that our buyer persona is like the VP of like building technology. And for us, it's I know coming into the next quarter what their priorities are, right? And a big part of it is like centralization. A lot of it, again, some of the obstacles that they run into is the fact that they're seen as a call center, right? Like, how do we help them navigate through that? And it's interesting because those challenges will funnel back to the other teams. Like sales teams will be like, oh, like I was on a call with the customer, but they kept mentioning budget and like how their call center. We would have that intel to be like, hey, you can mention to them like this product, it doesn't really impact their capex, but it doesn't impact their opex or something like that. Like we give them the language and the communication needed to overcome that hurdle. And I think that's the thing. Like that's what really makes us effective is like how well we understand our customers, their pain points, all the use cases. Like that will product teams will come to you and they'll ask you all the different use cases they're using it. And the same thing with customer success. Like they'll ask different questions around the customer, even though they're the ones that are usually customer facing and sitting with the customer. They're not the ones that are asking these detailed questions like where do you go to learn and all that stuff. That's where product marketing comes in. So I think that's where those two things really matter for product marketing to be really a big threat. And that's really what's helped me come a long way is not only being able to try to work well with the different teams, but it's also, hey, I know our customers, I know the best buyers, I know the buyers that are hesitant, and I even know like our users and how they can influence the whole purchase decision. So I think those are the things that will make PMM go from it's interesting because you don't even need the title. You could be an associate PMM, but if you know how to do that really well, and I took a very untraditional route where it wasn't like I was at an org and I stayed and I went from PMM to senior PMM and director, but it's like I understood how we work cross functionally and how, again, like at the end of the day, it's all the sources come from like our research with customers. And I took that to be like a founding PMM at a company and building that like at different organizations, building that voice of the customer program. And I think the title is just a title, right? Like, it's interesting. Like, I've been at companies too where I've had a report to a director, and I'm like, they just haven't done as much as a PMM at an organization where maybe they have a little bit more freedom to do whatever. So I think that's also a little bit of the interesting dynamics, but it's really just how well you can work with your teams and how well you can understand the customer.
Dude, that's I'm like chewing on something that's going to bother me. If you don't have an exact answer, that's okay. But I think there's a lot of product marketers who aren't thinking like you are. Hand raise, I'm one of them. So you said you even know they're like quarterly issues coming. And like I've never thought about that. A good example is I'm working with a client, one of their personas is product marketers, and they asked about budget. Oh, wait, Gab, wasn't this you about budget at the end of fourth quarter?
Yeah,
It wasn't a client.
it was
It
with
was
the
Gab.
pros. Yeah,
You were like, yeah, when do they have budget? And I was like, yeah, a lot of times CMOs save their budget till fourth quarter and then they realize they have extra. And if they don't use it, they lose it. And then so product marketing might be the fortunate one there to get that leftover budget. But I've never actually in my role thought about what you do. And that's like that quarterly shift, right? I'm thinking more like day to day things. So that's my real big question to you is how do you go about that level of detail and that cerebral nature of, hey, they've got a new quarter coming up. Of course, they're going to still have the same day to day priorities, but what can I help change the discussion for this coming quarter? How do you do that?
So I think a big part of that is like when you're writing with the customer success team, they're the ones that are actually in charge of doing these quarterly business reviews. And those that's a great time to either just be a fly on the wall and listen in on those conversations. But it's also a good chance to collaborate with the customer success team and be like, hey, is there an opportunity for me to also speak on some of the things coming for the next quarter with some of our customers? And if you have a bigger PMM team, that's great because then you can scale that, get more intel and research from different customers. But as a single PMM, I think that's definitely worth looking into and doing that research where you're talking to customers with the customer success team on a quarterly basis to understand like, hey, looking ahead to Q3, what are your priorities? What are your goals for this quarter or even for the rest of the year? And then at the same time, what are some of the challenges that you guys are facing today? Those two questions alone, I think will get you a long way. So I think that's definitely a big part for a PMM to do that is to really get ahead. Another area that I think is worth looking into is customer advisory boards. Sometimes it depends, like companies will do customer advisory boards either yearly or biannually. If you can, maybe if they're like your best customers or your advocates, you can do it more frequently. So I think that's also something to consider. And then the last part of it is teams, right? I think Jonathan Pipek said this before. I might be butchering his name, but he mentioned like a sales advisory board where you get that intel from the sales teams because they're obviously running into these obstacles on a quarterly basis, right? Where it could be like budget one quarter and the next quarter it could be, I don't know, like just not a priority. So I think those are like pulse checks that they can also give intel into as well. So I think it just really depends, but I really do think at the end of the day, again, it goes back to how the product marketing team can like serve the greater team cross functionally.
That's such a good tip because whether you're a founding PMM or if you're working with like 7 others, it's like budget are not always stuck in stones, right? And just by asking those two questions, you can instantly move things around. If you're bringing, hey, this is data, this is what we've seen, this is essentially windfalls or unexpected results that happen, you can have that control over. We often get pushed a budget like split by SBU, and we're like, okay, I guess I need to get this amount of revenue or influencing it with that amount of budget. But if you're seeing that results are not happening or thresholds are too low or whatever, any good manager or people that understand how product marketing works will at least be open to hearing you. So I like that.
I have a. Oh, go ahead, David.
I have nothing, no question.
Okay. Here's something that I've been struggling on, and this hasn't changed as being a fractional product marketer from when I was working in house. Talking to customers, like we as PMMs, we can all agree how valuable that is. And we as PMMs know what to ask, know what to dissect, and know what that means. But then there is that unique challenge that I feel like we don't really talk about that really sits on our chest is that we bring this intel, we talk to the founder, we talk to sales, we talk customer success. Let's just forget the last two, but let's go back to like our executive team. They're like, no, no, they don't know what they're talking about, or I don't like that. And then because of that, then it feels like for some of us now, you've done all this work, you know your stuff. Now you've got to convince your executive leader and be like, this is why you might want to consider this. I'm not sure if maybe this might be a me problem, but I'm curious, has that been something that you have seen before? And if so, like, how did you respond to that situation? Because this is something that I'm still struggling with today. So I'm curious, like, if this is how are you approaching it?
No, I'd love to hear all your guys' experience too, but I'm in the same boat. I think it's definitely, again, maybe it goes back to the fact that a founder or a C-suite just doesn't fully understand like the PMM value. But like I'll be honest with you guys, like I've gone canned because I've basically fought like the co-founder CPO on some of these things. I'm like, hey, like this isn't going to work. Our customers have never used this kind of product. The research has shown that it's like more of a nice to have instead of a need to have. They have this gut feeling, and I think that's the hard part is some founders really just come in with that ego. And I think they have to, right? For some of them to be founders and to do what they're doing, they need to have this gut feeling that really brought them to where they are. And I think the challenging part is if you have a good founder that will test that, and if they fail, then they'll come back and be like, hey, cool. You'd hope that they would learn and then you can move on and really be seen in a new light, maybe more valuable. But I've gone basically fired because of that. I've Been with another org where the co-founder or the founder had this idea. I don't know where it came from. Oh no, it came from because our product was built within the Apple ecosystem where Apple had launched this cool new product, very sexy and interesting, and we wanted to use that API for our product. And I'm like, there's no data around that customers are going to want to adopt this feature. Like, we don't know. He was like, no, it's a cool feature. We'll launch it and see how it goes. Like, it was just dead silent, no adoption, no anything. And sometimes you just gotta roll with the punches and just see how it goes. But even those things, I think what makes stronger PMMs is the ones that can actually roll with those punches and also still learn. I'll be honest with you, I'm not good at that. I think I'll roll my eyes and be like, all right, we'll see how this goes. And then it will not work out. And then I'm like, let's look what I told you. But that's probably not the best way of looking at it. I think it's probably really, okay, what do we all learn from this? And then seeing what sort of intel we can gather from that experience and taking that back to the C-suite. I think that's probably what will really gain respect. But I'm curious to hear Gab or like Eric, if you guys have any experience around that.
Essentially, I was working for a cybersecurity product, and it like my PMM journey quickly became a game of emotional intelligence because the product was like, I'll just say it as it is. The product was like a very much nice to have, if not boring to have, essentially. Crowded space, it's something good, but then you're stuck as a PMM. You're responsible for that product. It's an IP, you have control. But what's happening is the product was successful, the product was generating money, but it was very much an add-on. And during a meeting, we're talking about the new version. I'm leading the brief. I have that new messaging and everything. And one of the writers say, oh, this product is shit, literally on the call. And the director of product, who was like, it was his baby essentially, like he was the CEO, he was owning kind of everything under that SBU, was thinking about it, and he said shit, and then they started like arguing, and he left the call. And then I felt naked. I was like, okay, how the hell do I progress from that point, right? So all right, is everyone kind of calm right now, because we need to go over that a little bit. But if you have problem with the product, please talk to me first. And then I became like the bridge between the director of product, who has not the best EQ in that category, in that situation, with me. And from that point, I sat down with the writer and I said, why are you saying that it's shit? And he said, I have to do a lot of competitive intel. I have to write all of stuff. And when I take a look at the product and the way it's improving, it's not up to date. We're able to come up to a good understanding, but that's like the biggest extreme that happened to me. Like very much, oh yeah, 40, 50-year-old man quitting the call. It was not funny at the time, but afterward, I just had a lot of fun rethinking about that.
For sure.
Well,
They can dish the feedback, but they can't take it.
Exactly. Yeah. You have to take some shit if you're willing to give some shit.
David, a couple things before I ramble. I think it's awesome that you were so candid. Like you just straight up said, I'm not good at just rolling with the punches. And I felt that so hard, because I'll be my first to raise my hand. It is so hard for me to be like, I've done this research. My brain, which I think is rational most of the time, has determined this would be the best path forward, and you've picked something completely different, right? So one, it hurts because I'm just like, there's probably an ego to it, right? I know what the right decision is. You picked the wrong one. But then I think about, as a product marketer, it's now I have to deal with all this stuff, right? We have to roll out this product that no one's going to adopt. I'm going to have to lead the launch for all of that, and the assets and the messaging and everything that goes along with that. And that's where I feel I've always had this battle, right? And then I've moved into client life a little bit, and I love how Fletch PMM does their work, right? They'll basically give you 3 options, and they're like, you pick. Then we'll write the homepage.
Yeah.
And as I'm starting to do that, it's nice too, because I can give clients the offer of, here's what I think is the 3 best options for you. You pick the best one, and then we'll proceed. And because it's a client, it's a little bit less attached, right? Like,
Yep.
I don't then have to go run the launch for this thing. You do. And so I think with all of that, I really appreciate you just saying, hey, I'm not very good at it, and I'm learning to try to be better with it too. And any product marketers who are listening, give yourself some grace, because you've got 2 on this call who definitely can't just roll with the punches as easy as we'd like.
Yeah, definitely. I think even just what you mentioned, like with the And I think could be a whole nother podcast, but I'm sure a lot of PMMs are also right now curious about going the line between being your own independent like consultant or like agency and going in-house. And obviously there are pros and cons to that, but I've noticed that if you're hiring an external PMM agency, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot more influence and weight that comes in there, where the company or the founder will look to you as the expert. Obviously, not many of us are like Fletch or what's that lady's name? The April Dunford.
April
Like,
Dunford.
yeah, like
April.
they could do whatever they want because the company is hiring them because they know that they're experts. And I've always thought about, I wonder what the advantage is. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, like when it's in house, it definitely is for sure an uphill battle. And I realized like one thing that really helps with a launch, it's if you're going with a launch that you don't think is a great idea, but the founder is really, or the C-suite's really pushing for it, or the product manager, you launch it. And then I think what's really important afterwards is to do what you're going to do post launch, right? I think doing the research afterwards and really understanding, hey, working maybe closely with the user research team, like how satisfied were you with this product, understanding like areas of improvement, what else would you like to see? I think that's where the key will come in, because I've realized now that I think about it, I did that with one company and we were able to like improve that product that the CEO wanted to launch like a lot, because afterward we were able to get the feedback that we needed. But yeah, I think that it's gonna just be an uphill battle that I feel like PMMs just need to like suck it up and just try to see what they can learn.
Just to make sure I understand on that, let's say I'm a funding PMM, I'm about to do the launch, and I know that just by default it's crooked a little bit, or it's not up to the standard of the research I did or the understanding of the market I have. You would suggest to very much focus more on the post-mortem or the post-launch session to get that customer satisfaction or understanding of what they thought about the launch. So then you can tie it up back to stakeholders that disagree with you in the first place, and then be, hey, like we need that customer data. This is a way how I was able to gather that data. And it's just telling us that for future launch, let's move out from that crooked approach that we did for that one.
Yeah, I
Am
mean,
I
there's
correct?
one question you need to really ask at the end of that launch is, what value did you get out of this product? That's a question that us PMs love to ask. And if you see them fumbling or they don't really know the value, then I think that right there already tells like, and I know that the founder will have a hypothetical value point for what that product was supposed to do, but it may not match. And I think that's research there that's very valuable for us and for the founding team, because we can realize, hey, either your hypothetical value prop like met the standard or didn't. So I think that's one question that every PM should have after every launch, whether it be one that you did thorough research on or the one that you didn't want to launch but you had to.
All right. I know we're wrapping up on time here, but I got one weird off the wall question for you, scenario based. You ready?
Yep.
All right. So we have just created an event and sold tickets to the David Lim special. You've got a crowded, packed auditorium of, let's call it 1,000 founders. Give us a 2-minute spiel of what you need to tell them directly to their faces so that they'll be able to go back and hire the PMM team that they need and can actually respect, instead of someone who's just filling the old timesheet.
I think a big part of it really is just, again, clearly communicating and aligning on expectations with the founder or the C-level suite, really understanding that. And then I think a big part of it, again, really comes down to the expectations are wrapped around not just your responsibilities or what you're going to be doing on a daily basis, but again, it all ties back into like metrics, right? That's what founders and CEOs and C-suites care about, because it's like they're focused on growing their company, and whether that be revenue or whether that be users or even employees, those are things that you're going to need to really know about and understand like their priority around that stuff. And from there, it's like, how can PMM really like latch onto those metrics? And I think a big part of that will probably be thinking about, are there ways that we can impact those directly, like just PMM, right? Or is it going to have to be like more influential? And if it is influential, it'll have to be like, you have to clearly lay that out with the C suite and founders, like, hey, like, we're going to really help to improve the sales team's performance, and we're going to do that through XYZ. And if you lay that out like clearly out to the founder or C-suite, I think they'll give you feedback. They'll tell you like, hey, why can't you do this or that or whatever? And that's something that you'll want to brainstorm with. But I think really at the end of the day, for a PMM that's joining any company as like a founder, like you gotta really be able to set those clear expectations and align with the founder. I think that would be like my 2 cents. And then the other aspect of it, as I mentioned, is learn anything and everything that you can about the customer. Learn about even their motivators, what motivates them, understanding like if you could understand, I think at the end of the day, like this is a hard one, but if you can understand like their buying decision and criteria or the process, like that will also take you a very long way, because at the end of the day, like that intel is so valuable that that's what the founders are trying to figure out. Like, how do we get our customers or our ICP to really buy our products and continue buying from us? And if you can nail that, like it will take you a long way. You'll have that knowledge and you'll need to figure out how to disperse that out and influence the rest of the organization to understand that buying process. I think that will take you a long way for sure.
That's a great answer. And it's like something that I discovered after working with a lot of early stage startups is the sentence, I understand the customers, from founders is often not the same understanding than PMMs have. So when you're able to show them that they might have gaps, as you said, in the buying process and everything, then you can tackle the discussion of your founders. You want leads, right? If you want to get 2 leads, you need to understand the customer first. And your understanding right now might not be up to the level that you think it is. Just wanted to throw a jab of all founders listening that thinks PMM are lead generating machine.
Yeah, seriously.
Throw a jab.
Nailed it. David, it was and a pleasure to just meet you officially and not just stalk you on LinkedIn. And it was really awesome having you on here for the last hour. I think we'd love to know, and definitely anyone listen in, where can they find you other than just LinkedIn? And do you have any other things coming out? Anything you want anyone to know about and keep up with you?
No, for sure. If anyone's in New York City, feel free to reach out to me. We can grab a cup of coffee. I'll be completely cool with doing that. And then I may probably join some of those PMA meetup groups. So you might see me in a few of those. But that's probably it for now. And if anyone's down for a good pizza or a brew, you can also hit me up. I'm always trying to find like the best pizza spot in New York. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
John's of Bleecker is my vote.
Bleeckers? Yeah, that's the OG. I like that. I respect that.
But if I'm not in New York City and I'm just talking pizza, it's definitely Sally's of Pizza over there in New Haven.
Oh, yeah. I haven't been there yet. I plan on going, but for sure. Right now, the one that I'm really into is there's the Lindustry pizza. I don't know if you guys heard of that one, but
Lindustry? All right, I'm adding it to my list.
yeah, let me know. If
I'm down in central Pennsylvania, so I'm a 3-hour train ride from you.
Let's go.
All right. That was another kick-ass episode of We're Not Marketers. We will see you all next time.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Ciao. Thank you.
Yeah.
For listening to We're Not Marketers. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe, review our podcast, and share this episode with other PMMs. Thanks again, and see you soon.